Welcome home. We are WNST. Taos, Baltimore. Baltimore positive. We are positively into the summer months where this gets fun. Trading deadlines, first place baseball, all the things I've dreamed about my whole life, including home run riches. The Gold Rush Sevens doublers are in my hands. They will be in your hands if you join us on the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. There's a whole bunch of dates coming out. I don't want to give it all away, but I'm doing this oyster thing for our 26th anniversary, which begins on August 3rd. A whole year already gone. I have to change my cupcake. And we're going to have fun in this segment because it's post All-Star game. Yes, we have training camp. Yes, the Ravens are relevant, and they'll play all sorts of meaningless football for the next couple of weeks before they play a really meaningful game on September 5th. And baseball's going to be heavy here, right? Like, I'm going to have a lot of guests on. We're going to be talking about crochet. We're going to be talking about Scooble. We're going to be talking about prospects and all that heavy. And we may do that in this segment, but this was meant to be lighthearted. Todd Radom is a long-time I don't want to be disrespectful, but I call him a logo maker. He is a brand taste manager in the best sense of the word, and you'll get that vibe once you spend a little time with him. We're going to spend some time with him today. I don't know why he moved to Philadelphia, but he did. I'm going to allow him to explain it. Maybe it was the Bubble P and the throwback powder blues. Maybe it's the Dr. J had one of the iconic uniforms that the Sixers completely bastardized again and again and again. And the Flyers, whom I still hate, wear what they've always worn, which could have been the Baltimore Clippers uniforms back in 1965, 67. Todd Radom joins us now. How do I express to the world what you are and what you do, because you're sort of an art fart, but a real sports nerd, and you're really like zoned in on all this. And I want to apologize to you, your family, and all your loved ones, and anyone that's ever loved you for even thinking that you could have had anything to do with that tragedy last Tuesday night in Texas with those uniforms. I want to begin it with that for Chuckles.
Nestor, it is, first of all, it's great to see you again. And thank you for that, absolving me of any responsibility for having seen what I saw in person a week ago today in Texas. Absolutely. But you hit the tip of the iceberg with all those things. I always say I'm at heart a designer, a creator of sports logos and uniforms for 30 years. But I'm also, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm part of the media. So we get to do a lot of different things, you and I.
You've done hockey books on jerseys. I've had you on for yeah, it's not just that. So we're gonna go baseball nerdy. And I'll poop on the Flyers and Philadelphia whenever I want, even though I may be coming there this weekend to see train at our Speedwagon. I love Philly and I love cheesesteaks and I love Philadelphia people. And I pray for Howard Eskin, who's a friend of mine forever. So I'll say this. The jersey thing for me is really personal because it is the gateway to everything I ever loved about sports. Before I knew my cousin was famous and in the Hall of Fame and had a Red Sox hat on, and I had a little Red Sox bobblehead in 1973 when I was 5 years old. But the jersey thing, and I thought it was just me being art fartsy about the old Astros, and I'll pull out my Tony Gwynn. This is the one this is my gamer. So this is the only one, because this is modern and it wears well, but this is my Gwynn gamer. So this would give you an idea of where my taste buds go in regard to 70s garb and all of that. But the All-Star game thing is an abortion to anyone old school. I don't know who loves it. I don't know if the kids are buying it. The color schemes didn't even match. I mean, I go back to the warm-ups where, when the Baltimore warm-up be black and orange. If they played in San Francisco, it'd be that way. If they're in Kansas City, it'd be some blue and white thing. I'm down with branding, man. I mean, look at me. I'm all branded up. I got cool hair, all that, right? But what are they doing wrong? And the first thing I thought when I saw it all come down, I thought it was a joke on the weekend. I'm like, did they pull out the Miami colors? And they're no, they're wearing these things. All of the stench of February and March and the players bitching about this and that. And I don't even know the names of the companies because Fanatics, I don't even care, right? But I do care when it comes to my television in high def as it's portrayed against old and new. I see it on my social media. I don't need a reminder what the 1975 or 78 or 87 All-Star game looked like or the team pictures. I collected the baseball. I mean, I'm down with all of that. How are they getting it this wrong? You know what I mean? Maybe that's the question for Rob Manfred that nobody gave him, because you're on the inside of all of this. Who's running that? I mean, because it's a mess, and it's the only thing we talked about on All-Star Game Night was like, my God, why are they not wearing their colors?
Yeah, the uniforms got a lot of attention, to your point, Nestor, and it always strikes me about when uniforms get attention from people that don't normally think about the uniforms. It's not necessarily a good thing, and we've seen this come up time and time again over the years. But with all of the uniform issues this year, holding the sweat as they are, the small lettering, the lack of, I don't know, thoughtful details, um, it's not a good look. And the reason is, and I need to be diplomatic here because I work in a lot of different spaces, as you just mentioned. It's really a Nike initiative. Nike has a 10-year contract with Major League Baseball to supply uniforms, and they want to utilize the All-Star game as kind of a laboratory of experiment in the same way that they have done this really in the NBA, which doesn't get as much attention. Listen, I talk about this all the time, Nestor. Think about the fact that if you are watching an NBA game, or even better yet, if you're catching a little bite-sized piece of an NBA game on your mobile device, a highlight in a game, you don't know who's playing anymore. And I'm going to be that old guy who says, get off my lawn. But there's no home or road designations. You've got the Milwaukee Bucks sometimes in blue. I'm a brand builder. And when you start to chip away at this kind of equity that you've accrued over the years, it's a problem. Now, listen, the All-Star game is an exhibition. We know that. And you and I are of a generation from way before interleague play, which started in 1997. But I felt like there's always something very special about seeing those National American League teams line up along the base paths, and you see these guys in their uniforms. And here's something that even in recent times always struck me: the San Francisco Giants home uniforms. They're that beautiful cream color. They stood out among a sea of white uniforms in the National League. So we've lost something special, and it's all about marketing, right? This is the world, and it's kind of, yeah. They can they can flip the script, Nestor. They can move this narrative into a totally different place and just use those uniforms for BP and for the home run derby like they did traditionally from about 1997 up until a few years ago, and nobody's gonna be yapping about it.
You said I'm a brand builder. That goes way beyond you and me loving sports or loving baseball or idolizing Mickey Mantle or whatever. It goes back to your first team you loved. I was an Oiler fan. I grew up with the Baltimore Colts. I have my Baltimore Colts belt buckle over here, but I fell in love with the baby blue in 1973. I've talked about this forever. And even more so, like the bubble P in Philadelphia when Pete Rose, the 83 World Series, I was torn because I had become a Mike Schmidt Phillies fan and the Philly fanatic, and National League Baseball was exotic to an 11-year-old kid from East Baltimore. And then I think about like when I've had conversations with like Ben McDonald, he grew up in middle Louisiana, didn't have like a home team. I got to go to games all the time. I got on the bus and I went and saw Mike Flanagan pitch or Jim Palmer pitch or Steve Stone pitch, and I saw Eddie and Cal and like Brooks, all of that. So the Orioles logo and all of the Orioles logos of the Angry Bird in 79 and the ornithologically correct, we went through those cycles of Rick Dempsey with the white paneled cartoon bird that still is the iconic part of winning a championship in my generation. Maybe people with Frank Robinson or the 66 Orioles, which still look cool to me, even though the Louis jersey in 66 is awesome. I never saw the team wear that except on a throwback once and again. But there's something about brand building. And who's your home team? Who's your childhood team?
So I'm a New Yorker who is a Boston Red Sox fan.
Okay. You're never at Yankee Stadium, the new one or the old one, and the new one's a big mall and it is what it is. Everybody in there looks like they're at church. They're all wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
They all and it doesn't, we go through the retired single digit numbers and, they're all gone and like, who's wearing this? And I'm looking for the nasty Nestor Cortez. I'm looking for some of that gear at half price now that his ERA's tanked, maybe over at Stan's or someplace, across the street. But for me, there's something about that, the Tigers, Cubs, some baseball teams. The Orioles are one of those teams where like they never march around in green and gold. And I love the Astros and I love, well, before they cheated, and I love the Padres but what the Diamondbacks and the Marlins and the Rays, these newish teams have done, to your point, they've never really established any. I mean, the Mariners a little bit like that, but really establish anything. And there's something about the iconic brands, Lakers, Celtics, you know, Knicks. They don't need to do any. They don't need to play games, and they can sell a whole boatload of N's and Y's on navy blue caps, and it always works, and it's iconic. And these other people sort of paddle around, including the whole NBA, sort of looking for um selling a $99 jersey that no one thinks is cool, like those jailbird things that the Steelers wear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, to your point, markets are different. You and I both know this, and fans know this too. So if you are the Tampa Bay Rays, for example, you can go nuts with a City Connect jersey that, has kind of a skateboard theme or whatever they've got going on. And if you're the New York Yankees, who have literally opted out of that program, said, we're not doing this, right? I mean, as much as I hate the Yankees, and I grew up 6 miles north of Yankee Stadium, used to take the subway there. Um, it's on brand for them. And being a brand guy, not only do I totally get it, I kind of applaud it in certain ways. But listen, Nestor, the baseball season is a long one. I always say there's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of room for introspection. We're looking at guys who are quite often static. But yeah, I mean, I think you can have alternate uniforms. And I think the Orioles do a pretty good job. I'm not a huge fan of the Orioles City Connects. I like the cap. I love going to Baltimore not too long ago and seeing the back of the scoreboard at Camden Yards with all those different colors and everything. It's kind of a cool ancillary piece of art if you look at it that way. But the Orioles are going to always be the smiling bird, and all of that equity. We talk about equity that was hard earned and accrued during the years that the Orioles were the best team in baseball over a 10, 20-year span, whatever that was. You can't shake that. History is destiny.
Do you think the All-Star game will come back to like normal jerseys in some sort of in the way all of these new Cokes go away and things sort of come back? And to your point, what's old is new again, like the 80s are coming back, all of that. But I sense with Manfred and I sensed through the fan base, look, the game already doesn't matter, right? I mean, the home run derby is just this droning thing that you either love it or hate it. I'm a hate it guy. I walked out on it years when I could sat there all night. I just thought it'd be more fun to be sitting at the Met Grill in Seattle having a beer than watching the 900th juiced baseball get hit out of Safeco Park. But I would say this for the game itself and for a city that now has become reinvigorated, right? I mean, around baseball, but around its stars. We had the starting battery, we had the starting starter, we had Gunnar Henderson. We've got all of this stuff going on. We're going to get the game here. That's pretty obvious now that Mr. Angelos has left us. Mr. Rubenstein's coming in and sort of we're angling $600 million of stadium money is going to come into this before they put on the show here. I keep wondering, and I've wondered this about World Cup for years, and we're up on it now, right? I mean, here in America, where what will the show look like when it comes back to Baltimore? And I know it's coming to Philly too, and this is a chance for you, Todd Radom, to tap your cap here, being a Fishtown guy in Philly. Philly's got like everything a couple years from now, like right. So as this thing evolves and changes back to the mean a little bit, the baseball All-Star game is still the best of all of them. Like, yeah. I mean, I see that Whalers logo behind you, and I haven't watched the hockey All-Star game in 20 years. The football, I mean, enough said on that.
Yeah.
Pro Bowl.
There's nothing to talk about there.
But in the summer, when your baseball team is good and they're begging you, they're putting on cowboy shit. I mean, like all this goofy part of social media and fanification and engagement and all of that stuff that I see. Vote for me. There's a first wave, a second wave. To some point, I would like to think that you don't need Bud Selig doing this, and you don't need the game to dictate who's going to host the World Series. But it has such potential. I mean, it does, because even though every year I say I'm not going to watch, and I want Chris Berman back, I watch, and you get on a plane and go. And if they let me go, I would go. You know what I mean? If I were back in good graces of management, I would go and be a part of it. Luke went down to Miami. I went to Washington a couple years ago. I love the All-Star game, Todd. I love it.
I'm with you, Nestor. I've been to 28 straight All-Star games because I live in that world. And one of the fun things about being a baseball fan, well, let's back it up for a second. It's often been said that if you're a baseball fan, your relationship with the game is a very different thing than if you're a football fan, right? Because being a baseball fan is like being in a marriage. You got to work on it every single day. And it's
I
a
think that gets harder and
marathon.
harder as you get older too.
That's right. Or
You know,
if
like
you're with the right partner, it's all good.
yeah.
So, but the little fun diversion, just for the sake of fun, that the All-Star game represents for somebody like me who's been lucky to have been at all of these events, it means that I've been able to see every great player for an entire generation play in person, whether it's a real game or not. It means that I got to see Shohei Ohtani hit a home run a week ago tonight in Arlington, right? It means that, it's a nice fun diversion. We can have fun things. And when it comes to the uniform part of it and the evolving of the game itself, which you alluded to, everything evolves, right? I can't help these days but think of what Andy Warhol would think about what the world is like, where trends come and go in seconds and memes come and go. Nestor, I was at a Pirates game at PNC Park last month, and they have a Warhol cam because Andy Warhol famously was from Pittsburgh, right? But he got it.
Is it
He
sponsored by
said
Campbell's Soup or no? Probably not there.
it
Probably
was not
Heinz.
sponsored by, but it sure looked like that, you know?
Borrowed.
And
Kind of like the
maybe
Farrah Fawcett cover from some girls, right?
yeah,
Borrowed.
yeah, yeah. You just like you start to riff, I mean, so anyway,
Dude, I should bring you back and just do a whole thing on AI. I mean, because I
yeah,
could put you
oh,
in that
don't even
rabbit
get
hole,
me
dude, and it'd
started.
be
Don't
over
even
with,
get me started. So the All-Star game is just pure fun, and it's the middle of the season, and it's at a time where hopefully we can all as individuals step back a little bit and take a little summer break, a couple of days. It just fits the mentality of the moment. It's different from the NBA All-Star game in February or I've been to my share of NHL All-Star games too. But anyway, it's a fun event, and I'm going to say this, and I have no inside knowledge on this whatsoever. I have a feeling you're going to see the regular uniforms back on the field of play pretty soon because people want it. And if you're Rob Manfred, listen, he, he's Rob Manfred's a lot of things to a lot of people, but I think he's a pretty smart guy, and he sees where the tide is rolling in.
Todd Radom is our artistic guest. He is a man of brands, and he resides in the city of brotherly love in Philadelphia. Don't hold that against him. He's not even from there, as
Yeah.
we've outlined. So give me your Philadelphia thing, because we're social media pals, and you come down here once in a while for a game. I know when you moved there a couple years ago, I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, coming to Baltimore for a baseball game. Philadelphia's the place, and you haven't been there long enough, but I've been going in and out like you've been going in and out your whole life and seen
Yeah.
it evolve and change. And I mean, I was there for Live Aid, right? You know what I mean? I'm talking about seeing the whole stadia and everything around it, whether it's Def Leppard playing there on Tuesday night or whatever. Um, the vibe of sports in Philadelphia, the importance of those four teams, their sort of ebbs and flows, and really, I don't want to say the great American sports town, maybe unfair to New York or Boston or Chicago, but you moved into a place where like there's plenty of action, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very fair to say. And listen, I was born in Manhattan. I went to college there. This is the furthest I have ever lived from New York. I've got a New York City subway token tattoo on me. Okay.
Look at
Right
that.
there. So, there's a little bit of a loss of identity in some
We should
respects
let you
coming here.
ride for free for life if you do that.
All right, it's better than a Metro card, right? I should be chipped. I'll be there tomorrow. I'm going to tell them that when I'm in the subway. But anyway, so the story is this, like a lot of people, youngest is out of the house. Empty nest is in effect. My wife is a Texan. So, she has lived in a number of different places. So what were
I'm
we
glad
looking
you
for?
moved to a swing state to help things. So thank you.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
it.
I
Well,
appreciate that, Todd.
we might have been talking about this about 15 minutes before I got on with you, Nestor. But anyway, yeah. So what we were looking for a place that's easy to get around, there's an international airport. You got Amtrak, right? It's not too far from anything, not too far from our friends in New York. We have friends in Philly already. We wanted walkable. We live in this really dynamic neighborhood with great bars and restaurants and music and young people all around us, creative people. We're both creatives. So Philly checked a lot of boxes. So to be in the beating heart of the city every single day is such a cool thing. And Philly is easy, but the sports part of it is kind of astounding. Coming from New York and growing up where I grew up, and you know this, you've got friends with divided loyalties. People who are traditionally Yankees fans were also Giants fans. It's kind of like the old school. Nets are, well, forget the Nets, but Mets and Jets fans, well, maybe their parents grew up in Queens and moved out to Long Island and, were part of this new wave, if you want to look at it that way, that really wanted to make a statement in the early 60s. Here in Philly, I'm telling you what, I moved here in the middle of the 2022 World Series. So I went to game 4 and then the movers came the next day and took all the stuff down here. So to walk out of my house and see people clad in green on any given Sunday between the months of probably August to February, right? I don't care who they are. They could be young, old, black, white, people with kids. Everybody's wearing the unity that's connected with these teams is just, it's crazy to see. And it's very infectious. I have a friend of mine here in my neighborhood who said last year, we got to get you to an Eagles game. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to go. He's got season tickets. He's like, but we got to do the 4-hour all you can drink tailgate before and like just do the whole cultural experience. And it was really it was really eye-opening. So I'm right in the eye of the hurricane here.
I was a season ticket holder for the Philadelphia Eagles of Buddy Ryan in the late 80s. Baldinger was on the field back then, as I remember. Randall Cunningham, Rich Kotite came in right after that. So I sat in section 721, row 1. Todd, you're going to laugh. Don't spit your coffee out. We were in the family section. It was like a $5 discount. So we were all, it was the first row right behind home plate. It literally, so it was a
Yeah.
corner of the end zone, but like we were in the family section. So that's when we didn't have the Colts here. That's when I loved the Oilers in the mid 80s. So, and when they wore that proper silver bunting, with Mike Quick back in the day. Todd Radom is here. He's in Philly. The reason I bring up the Philly thing is I think of you as baseball first. And the whole reason I reached you was baseball jerseys and have a good time. And I have a whole litany of fun logo oriented things that I've been buying and sort of collecting, the things I actually have in my closet, the things I'm like, I want that Palmer 66 giveaway, I have to have that. So, but baseball to me and its resurgence here in Baltimore, we're still figuring out 30 years of destitute sort of awfulness. Cal Ripken's trying to figure it out 20 years later, coming back. Rubenstein's trying to, figure out. But the one thing they don't need to figure out is the team. Like Elias, the team on the field, how they build back, how they figure out City Connect jerseys. And that's going to be for Katie Griggs, when they're the new president of the team, who's coming in from Seattle, who apparently ran an all-star game out there, and the business and the branding and how we're going to sell tickets and what we're going to do with $600 million. But Philadelphia, you've flown into, and it's great that you said you were at game 4 of the 22 World Series. It's a very mature thing in Philadelphia now. And it wasn't. I mean, when they built the new stadium, it had been a long time since they won. But really, the last 15 years of the Phillies, 16, 18 years of the Phillies, has been this thing that's built into, you move into it, and it's packed every night, and everybody's engaged. And we don't have that here yet.
Yeah.
We're trying to find that again, whatever that 92, 93, 94 Camden Yards elixir. And that involved a whole different municipality, right? The Washington market all came to Baltimore. They all bought skyboxes. They read the Washington Post. They drank their Chardonnay, and it was the wine and cheese. It was so anti-Baltimore. It wasn't the thing changed, but it had all this money that begat Angelos in the late 90s. But man, we're talking 25 years ago since it was mature. And I don't know where the money's coming from, Todd, but I do know they're going to try hard. But in Philadelphia, it's there, it's built, and it's a beautiful thing to see the engagement of everybody in the community, because we don't have that yet.
Yeah, well, Nestor, I can't help but think of a very close friend of mine who I went to college with in New York 40 some odd years ago at this point, who back in those days, a Philly guy, still a dear friend, but I would come down here, he's like, let's go to a game at the vet. You could do that from New York. Take Jersey Transit, transfer at Trenton. You could do it cheaply. We'd sit up in the 700 level. We went to game 4 of the 1993 World Series. Angriest group of people I've ever been around in my life.
Should have
Up in
gone
the
to game
7.
5. It went better. Schilling pitched really well that
I
night.
know it. I
Yeah.
was at game 3 too,
Oh,
but
you were game 4. Was that the Madonna rain night or was that
that was
game 3?
15-14.
Say that again.
15-14. Blue Jays, Phillies.
I was at
Phillies.
that game. I mean, I was at all
Yeah.
those games, but Madonna played at the Spectrum, and there was a really long rain delay. But that may have been Tuesday night. That may have been
Tuesday.
game
Well, I was
3.
there Tuesday night too. You're
Okay,
right.
because yeah, but
Yeah.
I look, man,
We've
the vet,
overlapped. Yeah.
but the vet was on fire, and it wasn't that far from Tug McGraw and all of that. It had some layover, but then it kind of went away
I was
after
going to
that.
say. So then you hit a real trough. Let's just put it that way. And they build the ballpark here, and it's a great place to see a game. You know this. I do the ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast with Buster Olney every week in season. So I always do. We tape on Thursdays. I'm on Fridays.
My former colleague Buster Olney of the
There
Baltimore
you go,
Sun.
Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll say hi when we do our thing on Thursday. But anyway,
Tell him he did
he
great work covering the San Diego Sockers. Tell him that,
yes,
and that'll blow his mind. But go ahead.
yeah. You're going way back now, but I knew him then. But yeah, and so anyway, he asked me not too long ago. He said, "Listen, you were there for every one of these World Series at Yankee Stadium, the old stadium. I went to the 77 World Series as a kid. I went to 96. I was there in 99. I was there in 2000. I was there in 01." He said, "Talk to me about how the sound is in Citizens Bank Park for a playoff game relative to what that was like at Yankee Stadium in those years." And I had to think about it because I didn't think anything would compare. And, to see that upper deck at Yankee Stadium bouncing, like structurally sound, having some give to it, was absolutely crazy. But this does compare. It's a madhouse here. And the Phillies, and, you give, big props to ownership for making the investment. Nestor, you know this. Not only are they a good team, but they're a fun team. They're a good bunch of guys to watch. They seem to love one another. The city loves them because they reflect the spirit of the city. I see it every day. And by the way, I did get a selfie with Alec Boehm at a party on Monday night in Texas, right after a home run derby. So that was good. But anyway,
Well, the Phillies were down here last month during
yeah,
Fleet Week, and I broadcast from down at Cooper's, one of our sponsors. Shout out. Had the best blackened tuna wrap of my life that day. I haven't had it again, but I'm 5 weeks out. I'm coming for you, Samantha. But so I was down there, and it was Friday afternoon, and it was nothing but Phillies fans.
yeah,
And these were people my age and older. They were traveling fans. They were there to eat and drink. They were getting crunk at 2 in the afternoon, and they weren't kids. This wasn't 24-year-old people. These were groups of adults, parents with children, like 60-year-olds with 30-year-old kids toting their 5-year-old kids with them, all in Philly swag, running up and down the cobblestone. They took over the city in a good way, in a really good way, honestly. But it also showed um, me how mature that fan base is.
yeah,
And just
yeah,
seeing them, because look, this thing with Masson, and I watch the broadcast every night, and it's one big giant um, love in. And they put their cameras on the fans that are down in Tampa. And yeah, there were 800 Oriole fans in Tampa. Yeah, I've been a guy running buses to these events, for all my lifetime, all my adulthood. I've run flights and buses. I know what taking over a place looks like. As a Ravens fan, we've done it a couple of times where we took over places and there were 20,000 of us and 10,000 of them because they stunk and tickets were cheap and it was in Charlotte, right? And they were 2-9 or whatever. And we were going to the Super Bowl. But the Philly thing for me to come down to Baltimore that weekend, and for how much money they left behind, and the taste in their mouth for my besieged city we lost our bridge.
Yeah.
We got mayors going to jail. We had the riots. We've had all of this stuff, and Philly's no stranger to any of that. But to have those people come down here and see them having a great time and hearing people in that, I'm a guy with a Baltimore accent, that stupid Philly accent, in the Philly accent say to me, "We come to Baltimore all the time. We love it down here. It's great down here. I mean, you can walk to everything." And I'm like, wow. I mean, they don't say that to me when I'm up there at Eagles games. They're, calling my wife names and whatever else. But
Yeah.
and I say this with love for all the tasty cake eaters up there. I love you cheesesteak eaters and you pretzel eaters. I'm craving one of those pretzels right now.
Oh, they're so good, right?
Yeah, but the Philly fans and the Phillies, forget the Eagles and the rest of it. The Phillies have captured that money. We're going to spend that money. We're going to go follow the Phillies. I'm going to get my kid a Baum jersey, or I'm going to get him a Schmidt or a Carlton or whatever it's going to be. But I love that, and I want that for the Baltimore people, and I'm trying to find the key to that. And this is where I go back to you, Todd Radom. I'm a brand builder, you said. I'm a brand builder. And this is where the Orioles, and this is one of the reasons I really want to have some deep thoughts with you on it. And the Orioles have taken this resurrection project, and it is about City Connect jerseys being something everybody wants, and they always lose when they wear them, so it's bad. But like, there is a connection point that Peter Angelos completely annihilated for a long time
Yeah.
that the new group's trying to figure out, including me. They haven't figured me out yet, but there's a part of it that they've started from scratch again. They burned the thing down and it's coming back to life. And this is where brand builders are so important, bro. Really.
Well, listen, a couple of things. First of all, the connectivity, you talk about connections between Philadelphia and Baltimore is, it's real. And like I said, I can maybe speak to this in a certain way because I'm not from here, even though I live here. It's just one giant, the commonalities are so thick. It's kind of astounding. But here's the thing: the Orioles have a plan and had a plan. They clearly drafted well. You've got this well of talent that the fans have watched come along, and they've been said, just stick with us. It's going to happen, and it happened pretty quickly. They were a year ahead of schedule, I think, by anybody's estimation. But the Phillies, to move back here for a moment, they've got to seal the deal. They came close to a World Series title just out of the blue in 2022. Last year in the postseason, of course, the wheels fell off the wagon very suddenly. And the
We bought the
expectation,
closer.
yeah, I mean, the expectations are off the charts this year. They're the best team in baseball, but right now, but hey, the 2001 Seattle Mariners are remembered for having won all those games and not been able to get the thread the needle and make the whole thing happen. So the Phillies need to win a World Series title. And here is my dream, Nestor. The Phillies need to face the Baltimore Orioles in a repeat in some way, shape, or form of the 83 series that you talked about earlier, because that I-95, that connectivity with all of the talent and the organic, stuff and the real stuff, not the marketing or the forced, we're going to make it seem like this. The building of the sport and the excitement of these fan bases revolves around moments, and you can't script moments. So Bryce Harper and Bedlam at the Bank, that was so beautifully captured in our imaginations just a couple of years ago. It's real. It's a real thing. I hope the Orioles get there, and I hope we do it together because that would be so much fun, and it would be great for the sport of baseball writ large.
What do you love about sports after all these years? I mean, we got together because we didn't like the jerseys last week, but we love sports. We love the old jerseys. We like this connection to it. We can't stay away from it through a lifetime of talk. I mean, I talk politics, business, music. I've done
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff here, but it always does come back to, hey, the All-Star game's on. Let's check in. I don't give it the time I used to. I don't give it the money I used to. I don't support these teams financially because they've done everything in their power to sort of mute me and mistreat me, quite frankly, but I still love them. You know what I mean? Like, it's still, I want them to win. I don't intrinsically, we had an AFC championship game at home go wrong here this year. We've never had one since since the Baltimore Colts. And the baseball team has this promise of potentially bringing a parade here. Todd, I've been on the air 33 years here, right? Doing radio every day of my life for 33 years. This is as good as it gets for my town right now, right? For having all-stars, Lamar Jackson, MVP. I mean, Baltimore could be by March putting up a new bridge, what two parades. I mean, you can dream a little. Boston
Yeah.
does that. I mean, you can, but there's never, ever, ever been a better time for Baltimore sports on the field than right now. And
Well,
I'm going to be
yeah.
spiking the ball on that because I've lived through it all. I've seen it all. I watched Irsay steal the team. I worked at the paper begging to get the team back. Like I was there for the first. I wrote a book on the first one. I wrote a book on the second one. And meanwhile, I've written a book on the baseball team not having one. But there's something about waiting for this moment for the city and the teams to get well. Get well.
Well, you hit on a couple of really important things, Nestor. And the first thing I always say is that if you are a fan of a team, you're a member of this community. And this is a really unusual thing because this community does not ask you how old you are, doesn't ask you what your ethnicity is, doesn't care about what your income bracket is, none of this stuff. You are brought in as a full-fledged member of a community, and you can hug and high five people with pure joy. And like that, where does that happen in life, especially right now in this factionalized America and in a society which gets cleaved apart in so many different ways? Sports allows us to be the best versions of ourselves, I think, and also the worst at times, but that's a whole nother thing. So a couple of things along those lines. I think baseball in particular, to me, has always represented the background of my summer, right? If I've lived in a house, I remember having a little garage and puttering around the garage and having a game on a radio in the background, or driving around listening to a game. And I said it before, I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. There's a long story before that, but I started rooting for that team in 1975, and that was a very special year.
Right when my
But
cousin
listen,
left, man. I mean, that was
I
Burleson
know
and Beniquez, and yeah. But you still
I've
had
got his
Dewey.
autograph on a ball about 6 feet to my left over here.
Dude, Fred Lynn is still one of my all-time favorites. He's somebody I'm trying to get on the show. Like, it would matter to me to have Fred Lynn on. But Fred Lynn and Jim Rice going to Boston in '75, man, I was 7 years old.
Magical.
Fisk, the whole deal. Yeah,
And I remember the uniforms, and listen, I grew up in a family of Yankees fans. My father was a Yankees fan. I remember sitting and watching the Bucky effing Dent game with him.
Ooh.
My first games I ever went to at Fenway as a fan were the Boston Massacre games in 1978. So talk about like stealing yourself as a fan. But here's my point. Uh, my girlfriend in college was a Mets fan from Whitestone, Queens. We watched Game 6 of the 1986 World Series together. Like a blunt instrument through my sternum.
But one of you was happy.
Right. And that's it. And she was great about that. And she's still a friend today. But here's the thing. All that faith was rewarded in my case. Being there in 2004 in St. Louis, being at Fenway in 2007, being at Fenway, watching them win again probably in 2013, and being at Dodger Stadium in 2018 and saying, listen, I never thought this was going to happen once in my life, much less 4 times. So I'm spoiled. I'm very lucky, but it really speaks to this breadth of believing. And that's Baltimore, man, right? I mean, you guys, there's no guarantees. We see so many instances where teams get to the precipice and are not able to finish the deal, right? There's this innocent climb where maybe a team can get to a finals. And anyway,
It was a lot more fun making fun of the
Baltimore.
Eagles fans before they won,
Yeah.
Then once you win, I mean, it does feel like everybody's won now. I had Kenny Albert
Changes
on
your
last
identity.
week.
I mean, I remember having this conversation. I was in Chicago at the 2005 World Series, hot on the heels of having lived through 2004. And I went with my buddy Dan Bullard, who is a huge White Sox fan, Chicago guy. Went to games 1 and 2 in Chicago with him. And
this Chicago is what you're saying. This Chicago
that's
here?
that team. Yes.
This is the Chicago. Okay.
South side. So, and they win. They sweep the Houston Astros in the World Series. And he's like, I can't believe it happened. And I said,
cold and wet as hell, wasn't it? It was terrible, right?
Yeah. Scott Podsednik hitting a home run in the mist at US Cellular Field
You want
or
to know something
Comiskey.
that's amazing? I had a chance to go to game one and I didn't go. The Ravens were playing the Bears the next day. I wound up watching it at that big Weber's Grill in downtown in the Loop in
Yeah,
Chicago. But
yeah.
Ray Bachman, my producer, went to game one out in Chicago that night. It was just cold and wet and all. It
Oh,
was
horrible.
like it was all of that, right? But yeah, but this that changed everything for White Sox fans forever, right?
Yeah, and yeah, they're really awful now, and they haven't won since. They haven't even come close, it seems like. But your identity as a fan can be changed, and it speaks to your identity as a city, Baltimore. I'm like, listen, I went to Memorial Stadium. I'm not comparing myself to you in any way, shape, or form, but being a creative guy, especially, this is a town that brought forth John Waters and Babe Ruth and outsider art and all these. It's a funky, interesting place. And the size of the place matters too, right? Because championships get lost in New York or LA. And that kind of factionization that I talked about in certain respects, things get diluted. But what a championship. I can only imagine what an Orioles World Series victory would mean to a city like Baltimore, to Baltimore specifically, would be off the charts.
What's your all-time favorite logo that you created in sports, Todd Radom?
Oh, I get asked this a lot, Nestor, and there's favorite and kind of like meaningful, and there are things about navigating a process. I've designed Super Bowl logos. I designed Super Bowl 38 logo. Like, to be able to say you designed a Super Bowl logo is a pretty, I don't know, elite
You
kind
got
of
me
a thing.
Googling it now. I mean, I bought the program. I have the press pin because I
Yeah.
went to all those games. Which one was 38 was, hold on, 35 was ours. So that was 01. It was 04 Super Bowl. Is that
Oh, for
yours?
Houston, Janet Jackson, unfortunately,
Oh, okay.
Tom
That was the
Brady,
night.
all of
Okay.
those things.
All right.
So navigating that is a pretty serious thing. I've got a couple of fun ones that I designed the Brooklyn Cyclones logo. That's a really weird one that nobody's going to get. But as a New Yorker and somebody who loves history, we're having this conversation.
Cute little
Uh,
ballpark from what I understand. I haven't been there.
Ballpark is great, right? And it's real and it's cool. And it was the first pro sports team in Brooklyn since the Dodgers left. So it was cool to do that. But, I've got so many of them. These days, I work with Ice Cube with the Big Three Basketball League. That's a different kind of challenge. That's why I was down in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I remember it was doing that come through town, and I think he did Ryan Ripken's show on the way through. Cube did
Yep.
my show at the Houston Super Bowl.
Oh, look at
Dude, he had this wristwatch that was all ice, and he let my wife wear it during the segment. But he was keeping an eye on my wife.
it was like, great, he's a great guy and he loves and understands creativity. I've got a email I've got to get back to him about this morning, and that's not a humble brag or anything. But here's the thing: before he hit big, NWA, he's 19 years old. He's like, I've got to have a plan B in my life if this doesn't work out. He went to college for one semester to study architectural drafting. So when we talk design and geeking out and what things are going to look like in an arena and how color works, he totally gets it and he loves this stuff. So I really enjoy working with him.
Well, dude, I enjoy working with you and having you on the program. And now that you've moved a little closer, we got to work on one of these cheesesteaks or a pretzel or a ball game somewhere in there. It won't be a Flyers game. I'm not coming back up
Uh,
for that. But man, I had all sorts of fun show and tell for you today. But lately I've just been on the internet collecting just like sort of weird little things like old Houston Oiler Warren Moon and a Dan
Beautiful.
Pastorini and
Yeah.
yeah, so but this is one of my all-time favorite iconic 70s logos that is completely plain. And this and you say branding doesn't matter. Chico's bail bonds,
let freedom ring.
let freedom ring. Absolutely.
And I live where the Liberty Bell is, so I can walk there from my place.
Todd Radom, tell everybody how to find you and like, I mean, you've written books. There's a million different things I could promote about hockey and jerseys and all that stuff. But anytime I see poor fashion, I have to go to the fashion doctor and try to get fixed. And that's why I came to you, Todd.
Don't give it to me straight, doctor. That's it. You know what I'm talking about, Nestor. So I'm always on the socials, particularly X, as we now call it, and on Instagram, a very different feed for a visual guy. And I am at Todd Radom, TODDRADOM.
Man, I sit here in this office and I don't think of myself as particularly artistic. I'm an um, art appreciator, more than an artist, I guess, as far as I'm more of a writer. But I love logos and I have all of these rock and roll belt buckles from the 70s, the Pacifica belt. That's
Those are
become my
awesome.
jam.
Yeah.
That's so I see your little press pins behind you, and I had a
Yep.
whole bunch of collection of that. At one point, I wanted to collect them all, and I still think they're cool.
Yeah.
Super. If I were going to collect anything, if I were really rich and just pissing money away, I'd buy all the World Series press pins. I
Oh
would.
yeah,
All
you
38
get to a
press pins.
certain point and it gets very expensive very quickly, but they're great little pieces of art.
Oh, that's the thing about it. When the great Tommy Conwell of Philadelphia saw my wall of belt buckles, he's like, they're little pieces of art, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
it.
yeah, art appreciation from me to you, from artistic Baltimore, the charm city, to the city of brotherly love. Todd Radom is our artistic friend, our artist. And one day I'm going to get you and Rasig together for a crab cake over at Coco's. Oh, man, the fireworks will explode on that day.
I would love it.
Maybe it'd be before Game 3 of the World Series between the Phillies and the Orioles down here in
Oh,
October.
I'm taking the week off already. I'm telling
Crab
you.
Cake Tours get back out on the road. Well, you don't know what's good. You ain't been down here for Coco's Crab Cake. Or I'll take you down to Faithley's or over to Costas. They're all different. They're all delicious. And it's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. The Gold Rush Sevens doublers. We will have these in our pockets for our next appearance. It's going to be the 13th at State Fair in Catonsville with County Executive Angela Alsobrooks, who was running for or for senator, U.S. senator, and we're also going to get Larry Hogan on at some point. I hope invites are out. But beginning on the 13th, we reconvene with the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. It'll be politics, and I'm going to get fined a quarter every time I say PG County instead of Prince George's County. So I'm getting out ahead of things. My friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care keeping us oiled up. Make sure we get to all these cool concerts and ball games. And Luke gets to training camp on time. And Luke gets to the ballpark this weekend for the Padres. I hope the Padres wear a proper jersey this weekend. Put the right jerseys on you. Dress Manny Machado the right way. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. I'm cooling down. It's just art.